Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 51 of the Titanforge podcast. My name is Dratnos, joined by my friend Trell.
Hey, guys.
And Tettles.
Welcome to the Nighthold.
Welcome to the Nighthold, indeed. A beautiful backdrop you've chosen for us today, Tettles. So today we are going to talk about what to do once you actually have a group of people to push Mythic Plus with. Because last week, our episode with Growl, that was a really popular episode, by the way. Glad you guys enjoyed that one. We're really happy with how that one went as well. Last week, we talked a lot about it with we kind of always just wash over this part. You know, we talk about, and, you know, of course, the best thing to do is to push with a group or whatever. And we don't actually talk a lot about the dynamics of actually doing that, the process of playing in a group, a consistent group, and how to make that work well. So that's what our main topic is going to be this week.
Our last episode was very individual focused, I feel like, and it talked a lot about how to improve as an individual and like what you should be doing to make those improvements. But this episode is going to be a pseudo follow-up as to like what you should be doing whenever you start getting into groups, or like you have a consistent group that you want to play with.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal for us this week. We do have some other smaller topics though to discuss. Tettles, also, I understand that our giveaway has concluded.
Yes, so the giveaway concluded. 3 out of the 5 recipients for the first roll of them did not respond to me within 72 hours. So I re-rolled 3 of those. I think we only are waiting on one response left for the giveaway. So big congratulations to all those who won.
So check your Twitter DMs. You might be that one person whose time is running out to to reply.
I still have like 60 hours or something like
okay. Trell, how are you? How's your past week been going?
Oh, it's been good. Teaming is very fun and engaging in these dungeons.
Oh yeah, we love teaming. Teaming's such a great affix. Up there with Tyrannical and Fortified in terms of just how fun it is.
I don't think that it's actually... Okay, so I think teaming this season is way worse than it has been in previous seasons, at least. It is still really bad for a couple dungeons, like notably King's Rest and Shrine of the Storm. But this week of teaming and quaking was previously impossible to play on, and now it's a little bit more doable.
Yeah, it's a good week by virtue of no other affixes being active, yes, but yeah. Teaming is still a problem.
I actually think it's a little easier this season than last. Like there's no tides in these teaming packs, at least. But other than that, it's still a challenge. It's fun to make the groups you're playing with pull bigger and do harder things though to make up time.
This was a tides week last season, I'm pretty sure as well. I think. Yeah, I remember, dude. I just remember like Double Defiler, Death Speaker, Tides in the Underrot. Do you guys remember that fun pull?
Holy shit! Yeah, you're right, because they would stand in front of Spellcrawler's Ancient. You just like, so what do I do here? And it's like you don't really pull that. I don't really know what you're supposed to do.
The teaming Tides and a Taldazar on the left side in the very first pull with the 5-pack next to the double Colossus spawn. That if you pull the 5-pack, it would also chain the Colossus because of the Emissary of Tides being right there.
Yeah, so you'd get like 3 Confessor, 3 Augur, Juggernaut, Guard, Colossus. Tides.
Great pull.
That's a fair pull.
Yep, that's definitely pullable. So yeah, Beguiling was a great affix, but even with that gone and with the changes to Quaking, teaming is still pretty rough. But it's not impossible to do in Keys this week. This week is it's probably the 3rd best week on the calendar, right? For Mythic Plus pushing behind the.
Depends on how much you value the skittish bolstering.
Yeah, that week is potentially really good as well. But that week is a very big variance between which dungeons are playable and which ones aren't, right?
That's the King's Rest key week.
Yeah, that is the best King's Rest or like Temple week, right? Yeah. So that's what we've been up to. We've been doing some keys. Let's advance to talking about our supporters over at patreon.com, supporting our show every week, patreon.com/Titanforge. Thanks so much for the support, especially those who've just joined in since our last episode. If you should be on this list and your name isn't being read out, get in touch with us. Discord's the best way to do this, but Patreon DMs, everything work as well. So those supporters over Patreon are John of US Proudmoore, King of Skills, VTech XD, Zuko, Ja, Drunk Swede from Legion of Lemmings, Argent Dawn EU, I Wish I Was Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Thanks Tettles, Heltari, Ishio, Blue of Emerald Dream, Chromed, Seraphicus, Trekkie, The Marsh Hare, Regulus, Never Nude, Chewy. We want a $25 Covenant change service in the Blizzard shop for Shadowlands. Coke Dog's Gopher. Zool 54, Worgen 0. Dratnos' main basement captive. Raiten, the supreme tank of the guild. Lufer. Can we call Urgroth the tank buster Grand Slam Gary instead? LXIX thinks Workshop's soundtrack slaps. Salty Sunny. Dazboot, the 7th best mage in the guild. Brought to you by Dratnos the Excel Wizard. Brad Ceratops. Cathedral's Rules. Nerf Spell Reflect. Like that one. Charles Missing, Captain Ahab Beard.
So I endorse none of those except for Nerf Spell Reflect.
Spell Reflect, do you know it's on details now, though? Like, naturally, without having a weak aura? Yeah. Huh. It doesn't have everything perfect yet. Like, it doesn't have, like, spell reflected dots aren't quite showing up fully, I don't think, yet. But, like, people's details are now correctly showing some of spell reflected damage. And I think that might be what we need to get that ability nerfed. So, good job with details.
Honestly, okay, I don't know if it necessarily needs to be nerfed, but it definitely needs to be available for more than just Production Warrior.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know, like I think that just balanced around is something that it's really kind of not right now, and it makes warriors do second place damage in like most Waycrest Manor bosses, which is wild. All right, so before we move on to our main topic this week, let's talk a little bit about some news that is coming, which is Ineffable Truth is getting nerfed. Now, we're not 100% sure exactly what this is going to affect. Ian Hazacostas tweeted that they were only looking for potentially the specific Ineffable Truth interaction. So we're not sure how much this is going to affect more than just the thing that they start talking about here. But the idea is that cooldown or corruption effect Ineffable Truth will no longer interact with abilities like Fist of Justice to cause more than the intended amount of cooldown reduction. So flat cooldown reduction provided by Fist of Justice and similar abilities will no longer be unintentionally increased by effects that increase your cooldown rate, such as Ineffable Truth. Now, there's a long list of which classes are actually affected by that. For instance, Holy Priest. A lot of the value in Holy Priest Ineffable Truth is that your holy words get extra cooldown reduction as a result of, casting your spells or whatever when you have Ineffable Truth up. A reading of that blue post would suggest that this would be going away as well. Holy Paladin, not a big deal for them because for them, most of the Ineffable Truth thing that makes it worth stacking. Not something that, like the Crusaders Might interaction, not a big deal for them. Fire Mage was briefly something we thought would be hugely affected until Ian Hazacostas tweeted out that they didn't want it to affect how Fire Mage played for a month, so presumably that is not going to be affected, but an initial reading of this would have suggested that Memory of Lucid Dreams Major is similar to Ineffable Truth in that it makes your Fire Blast have a shorter cooldown, and then Hyperthetical Traps is similar to Fist of Justice in that it gives you flat CDR, right? And so an initial reading of we're fixing all of these interactions from that blue post would have led you to think that Fire Mage is also not going to have the same interaction between Hyperthread and Fire Blast in their Lucid window. But then Ian tweeted out that is not their goal, so probably Fire Mage okay. But these other specs with flat CDR effects that interact with Ineffable Truth are potentially still going to see that interaction go away with Ineffable Truth in particular. Of the ones on this list, to me, the one that stands out the most as being relevant is Anger Management for Warriors.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, so Trell, is that something you've used on a Prot Warrior? Is that something that you think is relevant to be going away?
Yeah, a couple months ago on Tournament Realm, I played a full verse with one Ineffable Truth build, and I really enjoyed it because cooldowns were up like all the time whenever it procced, and you had infinite shield block, and you could spell reflect almost every cast on certain bosses. You could kick sooner too. I mean, Ineffable Truth is just good in general, but the extra CDR it gives from Anger Management, which is what reduces all your major cooldowns every time you spend Rage, is huge. And so with that going away, I don't think it would be great for Warrior, but it would probably still be a good addition if you had a choice for just shield block.
How did it affect hasted abilities like Blade Dance for Demon Hunter?
So it's still going to, like, the stuff that has a hasted cooldown should still be getting reduced by the same percentage by Ineffable. It's only things that provide flat CDR. So for Demon Hunter, like, picking up souls will no longer give you extra CDR when you have Ineffable up, unless they make this only affect Fist of Justice, which it's kind of unclear what Ian Hazakostas' tweet was supposed to mean here, because, he tweeted that the specific interaction we're focused on involves Ineffable Truth. So they're going to look at the potential collateral damage. Unclear if that's going to mean that they only make it affect Fist of Justice, or if they'll make it affect every Ineffable Truth interaction.
So what about like Whispering Eldritch Bow or like Rapid Reload for Hunters then?
Yeah, so Whispering Eldritch Bow hit ticks would be a flat CDR effect that would stop it interacting with Ineffable Truth. Although Hunters don't really play Ineffable Truth anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But Barbed Shot, the 12 seconds off of Bestial Wrath, also one of those things. Rapid Reload, the time off of Aspect, all of those are technically things that interact with Ineffable Truth right now that would no longer do it if they, if they make it so that Ineffable Truth has no more interactions with flat CDR. So that's definitely, it's a little bit of a weird change. I think this is of the changes that Blizzard has announced. This has been one where people have been like, wait, what? How? Because there are a lot of people who just don't actually know how Ineffable Truth works, right? They just kind of wave their hands over it and they're like, ooh, me get proc, me buttons cool down faster. But like the actual behind the scenes of like, okay, well, what's the interaction behind all these little bits? It's not something that is kind of easy to understand. So,
well, I don't think a lot of people understand why it's getting nerfed either.
Right. Well, there was a clip, right? There's a PvP clip of like Sea-Doo getting hodged 4 times in 10 seconds or something.
Yeah.
Which, clearly that's a little wild. But to me, okay, here's what I hope they do. I hope that when they go back and they, like Ian said, that they were going to look at the collateral damage, I hope that they look at all this cool stuff that a lot of specs have and decide that the collateral damage is too great and literally just nerf the interaction with Fist of Justice. Like, if you just hit that one, I think we're chilling everywhere else. Or just hit PvP Ineffable Truth. Make all of these abilities worse in PvP, fine. But leave PvE alone, because I think PvE Ineffable right now is pretty great with all of these different effects.
Well, I think they're only like really aiming it towards Hodge. The only reason that these changes are even occurring is because of Fist of Justice and Hodge. Is it really that problematic with any other class or spec?
I don't think so. No, yeah, I think all of these
I don't think so either.
I think that the anger management Ineffable play pattern is really cool, and like Eyes of Rage for Havoc DH, it's awesome. It's like, you like try not to pick up any souls if you don't need to, and unless you get an Ineffable proc, and then you go and grab all your souls, vacuum them up, and get a bunch of CDR. Or like you save your Chaos Nova to make a bunch of souls when you have your Ineffable proc. It's pretty awesome. So I hope that that doesn't go away, because that's really fun.
Yeah, because there's a lot of classes that Ineffable, like one Ineffable 1 is very good on, and it's nice to have that just for the flat CDR. Obviously, Holy Paladins are an outlier. They want a bunch of Ineffable, but I don't know. I feel like this is a little bit of an overreach in terms of like what they're nerfing and the reason that they're looking to nerf this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the thing that especially seems bad is like all the warriors, that got an Ineffable or two. Like it seemed like they were trying to not nerf any corruptions except for once the vendor came out. Like that's why they hit the gushing nerf. They announced it at the very start, and then we just immediately the week after we have the Ineffables on the vendor, we get the Ineffable nerf coming. So that's rough.
I don't know. It's weird that they're still nerfing corruptions, but they won't like touch classes.
Yeah, like the Fire Mage thing as well. Like, Fire Mage, this would have represented a 7 to 9% nerf for Fire Mage, and they're walking it back, but like that actually seems like a reasonable amount to nerf Fire by, if not more. So
yeah.
7 to 9%. I don't think that seems that bad.
I mean,
that's not how much they need to be nerfed by.
Especially given they're still getting Mastery. Like they still don't have full Exodia Mastery yet until Masterful 3 shows up on the vendor. All right. Anyways, that's the Ineffable Truth changes. I think it's interesting to see exactly how it progresses, and we'll know more about what exactly it's going to do when they announce what exactly it's going to do. For now, let us move on to our tip of the week segment. Let's see, Trell, do you want to go first here?
Yeah, I got a clip.
All right.
While you bring it up, My tip of the week is Twilight Dev is bad and should be thrown into the dumpster. I'm just kidding. It's actually really good damage, but some unfortunate things can happen, such as mind control effects in Mythic Plus. And here you can see me get deleted by a mind control instantly.
Twilight just instant killed all of us. Reset the boss now, like right now, like right now.
It also killed another member of my party, and then the boss cast and killed a third member immediately after. So there was no recovery, unfortunately. If it was just me, we probably could have battle res me, and it would have been fine. But the cascade of events in 2 seconds there wiped our key.
Oh my god, dude.
Twilight Dev, dude.
I'm cursed. I don't know.
Yeah, this is like the third clip I've seen from twitch.tv/Chelsky of Twilight Dev. Yeah, Hearthstone Triad. Storm Song the first time, Storm Song the second time.
Oh, wait, there's a Storm Song the first time? I didn't see the Storm Song the first time. I did see the fucking... They pulled through the gate in Nataldazar.
Oh, yeah, well,
yeah, in the KSM tournament, I pulled through the gate in Natal.
That happens to all of us. We've all been there.
I was dumbfounded. I didn't even think I got killed by my teammate. I thought I missed my own kick and it like did double damage somehow. Like in my head, that's what I thought in that moment. And then I realized 5 seconds later it was Twilight Dev, and I was just like, "You got to be kidding me!"
Yeah, Twilight Dev. You know, some of it is play aroundable, but the mind control thing, not really. You just kind of got to hope that doesn't happen.
There's some counterplay, like knowing that this has happened to me a couple times over the last few months. Everyone should face away, I guess, right as the mind control goes out, just in case, you know?
But the thing is, you could proc a Twilight Dev like 4 seconds in advance or whatever, and it could still hit somebody.
Yeah, like the travel time could still be going. Like, I don't know. There's so little counterplay to that.
Mm-hmm. All right. My tip of the week is your bonus rolls have bad luck protection within any given instance. So the more often, every time you don't bonus roll an item, you get more likely to bonus roll the next time you roll.
You mean every time you fail a bonus roll?
Yeah, exactly. Every time you bonus roll at artifact power, you're more likely to get an item the next time until you get an item, then it all resets. So what this means is, first of all, you can track this, and second of all, if there's an item, like say there's only one item left for you in the raid that you want. Say you want an Azoth item, and you've got 2 bonus rolls per week. The best strategy is, if you don't have any of that bad luck protection built, you should just bonus roll any boss before N'Zoth, and you'll be more likely to get the item you want from N'Zoth. Because worst case, you'll get an item from that boss, and you'll be at the same luck on N'Zoth. And best case, you'll fail your bonus roll the first time, and then have some bad luck protection in when you're getting to N'Zoth. So planning that out can actually be a valuable thing to... It's worth tracking that, ideally. So Saved Instances is an add-on that will put a little indicator next to your bonus roll of how your bad luck protection is looking. And you can use that to make a decision about whether you want to use a bonus roll on a medium value boss or whether you want to save it to preserve your bad luck protection for a boss you really care about.
I've never really bonus rolled with intent like that, but I guess if there's only one piece of loot that you really want out of the instance, it would make more sense.
Yeah, I've been doing that. I did that a couple times on my Demon Hunter because my Demon Hunter had just one upgrade from Nihilotha that I needed, so I was just trying to game the system for that.
What'd you say that add-on was? Saved Instances?
Saved Instances does, I think, is the one that puts the indicator next to your bonus roll. I think it's that one.
I think so too.
Yeah. It also does a bunch of other cool stuff for like tracking alts and instances and lockouts and stuff. All right, let's take a look at Tettles' clip of the week. This one is from THD against the Tank Buster.
This is really cool.
Let's have a watch.
Demo log.
Oh, this is huge.
Okay, not the Tank Buster, the Nihilotha one, the boss.
Oh, goodbye, Tank Buster. Hit the caster.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
It's hitting for 500k.
So he melted the Tank Buster. So for those who really don't know what he's doing, he's actually pre-building imps out of line of sight of the Blood of the Corruptor there before he walks out of the Nihilotha realm. And then once those imps are pre-built, then he's able to stack up, and then he pops like the fattest tyrant on it. The second clip that I have, he kind of talks through what he's doing.
Okay.
Just so you can play around demonology.
Let's watch the second clip.
Yeah, right now I'm just building cores.
That is so much damage though. So that's way more than Fire Mage can do.
Demon Bolt instant
in that amount of time.
And you can build up to 4 of them.
To a single target.
And your Dreadstalkers after 12 seconds give you 2 cores. Or your imps randomly give you 1.
So like here we go, right? And I'm gonna stand right here. See the imps? Now it's an 820 tyrant. So now the boss is gonna get deleted.
My limits.
That's so good.
That is very, yeah, so the other trick you saw him doing there was the imps being created here in this spot is out of line of sight. And when imps are spawned out of line of sight, they don't immediately start casting, and they actually run all the way to their target before they start casting and losing energy. And that way you can get more energy into your demonic tyrant. There's even another spot in Junkyard you can go on Gunker where you can have them be out of line of sight and have no path to the boss, and that makes them last even longer, and you can make an even thicker tyrant. It's a very, very cool game mechanic. Very clever use of game mechanics there. All right, let's move on to our main topic, which is pushing with a consistent group and how to make that work. So we had, after our last show, we got some good comments in our Discord. Loved the show last week with Growl. It was super interesting hearing about the transition from medium to high keys. Couple of brackets were mentioned in terms of key difficulty, each of which presents different difficulties and knowledge requirements to break through. This, combined with the advice of tricking higher skilled players, makes a lot of sense with a large player pool, and being the only one out of 2 or 5 lacking necessary information to break into the next bracket. But I play Alliance. Typically, the only tank I run with is our guild's main tank, who also spends his time helping out the entire raid roster, and only 2 healers are really interested in M+. Whether it's the case or not, it really does feel like we have to take a whole group and learn together slowly to break into the next level, even though that was specifically advised against by Growl. I'm only about 3,500, so don't get me wrong. I don't feel like I deserve a higher score than I have, or like I should be at the top of the Raider IO ladder. It just really sucks feeling that there's a limited opportunity to even get in and try keys. I have no desire to leave my guild, so Go Horde isn't an easy solution. Damn it, they preempted me there.
That is the really best solution, but yes.
Any ideas on how to either fast-track the learning process of an entire group or network within a vastly smaller community? Yeah, I mean, it's just, first of all, if you're Alliance side, it's just, way harder. There's just a lot smaller community available for Mythic Plus, so that's definitely a challenge there. But that was what inspired our main topic this week, which is going to be, not just taking yourself from one level to the next, but actually doing it with a group of people. And that presents a bunch of challenges of its own, and may not always be possible. I think to me, that's the thing to keep in mind always, is that you cannot control what other people's motivations are, or whether or not they are going to work out in a Mythic Plus push setting, whether or not they're going to hit a ceiling or not. That is not something that you have power over.
I think the hitting a ceiling part is also pretty important to know. Ideally, you're going to get the 5 or 6 best players but say you outgrow those 5 or 6 players, what's your best cause of action? I would say probably jumping to a different group, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's still, yes, if you're trying to optimize for yourself, but even within a group where their ceiling is lower than yours, you can still push with them to their ceiling, right? And you can still learn beyond that. So again, we're assuming that that's the goal this week, is that you have a group of players that you're trying to push with. I guess we can start a little bit though about the process of deciding and finding which players to play with, because that is definitely an important thing as well. Trell, do you have any kind of advice as somebody who's started multiple Mythic Plus teams? What kind of things to look for in your teammates?
Man, I've started my own groups for years now, I guess, and I feel like you just fall into it eventually. You just have to keep playing with people until you find people you like and you want to keep playing with. And when that goes wrong, or you have to find new players to keep going up key levels, which has happened to me, both those situations have happened to me in the last 2 years. You just have to network. Whenever you have a chance, just play with different people. Bring in another DPS if someone's missing. Get to know them. Find a healer when your healer's missing. Play on a weird time of day sometimes, just to play with different people. I've stayed up way too late a few times here and there, just to play with JB or with some healer that stays up at a degenerate hour to do keys. And I don't normally do that, but it's good for me and my networking.
Yeah, so that's kind of building like a broad friends list of people, because you're not just immediately going to have like a group of 5 players, but when you have a broad friends list of people, then you maybe get into this situation where you start you play with a couple people a few days in a row, and then from there you've got a stew going, right? And you can start actually turning that into a group that you play with consistently.
And I think the best way of doing that is normally reaching out to people in your guild. Like he was saying, he doesn't really have like a large networking base, but the way that you start that large networking base is reach out to the people you know. A large amount of the time, those are going to be people in your raiding guild, maybe in your close friend group, stuff like that. Just pick players that you know are good and are properly motivated, and reach out to them and see if they would be interested in pushing keys.
That's what I did in Legion. I didn't know anyone in the community yet, so I just got guildies to play, and one of them was my roommate behind me. We started doing keys at like 16, 17 level, and I did it with like probably 6 to 7 guildies. And then eventually I had to find a bunch of different people, but you got to start somewhere.
So let's talk a little bit about composition in the group. So, Tettles, how important do you think it is to think about what classes people are going to play before deciding to play with them?
So I think it depends on what your goals are as a group. And I think it depends on like how high you really need to push. I would say at the beginning of pushing, whenever you're first getting into it, and you say you do your weekly 15s most of the time, and you could probably pug up to like, I don't know, 16 or 17s pretty comfortably. I would say composition matters a lot less, right? I think you could probably run like a triple range comp with a competent tank, and then like any tank class, and then any healer duo, like healer tank duo. You could probably run that, and I think at that point, comp doesn't matter. But once you start pushing higher, you're going to notice comp starts mattering more and more. I would say that comp matters more whenever you're trying to create strategies, though, less so for like being able to complete the dungeon, because you can complete the dungeons any comp. Like if you're given enough time, I'm sure you can, right? But creating the strategies to be able to properly affect the dungeon in a positive way, you have to factor in like what utilities like all of your players have, and that's what Grau talked about last week. Making sure that your utility is well known to your group and how to functionally use it. Like you're going to need to make sure that you like all of your players in the group understand that and understand what they should be doing.
Yeah. So Tettles, as somebody who recently rerolled, what kind of level of keys was it where you started feeling like that was a necessary thing to do?
25s, like right as I started hitting the 25 mark, I felt like my Moonkin was just so bad. I was like, I cannot play this anymore. It was just like it was like almost unplayably bad. Like it did so little damage, I felt like. And sure, I'm sure I could have gotten a better comp, right? Like I could have played with the best Moonkin comp. But sometimes you just got to pick your battles. But at that point, it was time for me to reroll.
And I think, though, that's pretty illustrative, because Moonkin is one of the weaker ones right now. Like, I don't think there's all that much that's going to cap out lower than Moonkin, besides maybe, like, Affliction Warlock. So I think the kind of thing here is, if you don't have your goals set that high, the comp can probably work with, with weird stuff in it, right? With whatever in there. But you are signing yourself up to do more work, and you are putting a ceiling on yourself that is lower than if you were playing, the Hunter instead of the Moonkin or whatever.
But whenever you're playing with a consistent group, you like fall into less of these problems. Like say you are playing something that's underrepresented. I think I've seen a lot of enhancement shamans lately for some.
Dude, enhancement shaman blasts.
Enhancement shaman kind of pumps, but like not many people really want to play with an enhancement shaman just because of like
they don't do anything.
Exactly, yeah. And they don't really do anything. They have cap totem and wind shear, but like that's about all the functional utility that they really have. But even still, like, so say you are playing an underrepresented class, playing with a consistent group is the best way to be able to push, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, definitely better than pugging if you're playing anything other than like Havoc, Outlaw, BM, Resto Druid, any tank, all that stuff. Those are the ones that can do it with the pugging pretty easily as well, and don't really need a consistent group. But the consistent group really helpful for all the other stuff. All right,
I'd say it's definitely important for the off meta specs. Like you can pug as a meta spec really easily. People understand your class normally. They understand what utility that you would normally use in every situation is. But if you're a non-meta spec, you got to like really announce it every time you do something in a pug. Like if you're a Shadow Priest, make sure they know you're going to mass dispel that first sphere on the Fear because they're going to love you for that. Or mass dispel the 2 dots on Rixa, stuff like that. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's talk a little bit about ripping or designing your strategy. So coming up with, yeah, just ripping those from Charles Wago whenever he puts all his routes up.
All right, so we're running the Dratnos expert route this weekend.
Do not do that. No, I mean you can start with mine. There a lot of people put up their routes actually every week. You can find those, or you can even just watch some team that has a similar comp to you and see what they do in dungeons. But ultimately, your goal, if you're playing with a consistent group, you guys should start having like a route for each dungeon that you agree on as a team and that you do every time, because that will go a long way to helping you push higher. Just familiarity with the strategy in the dungeon, doing the same pulls over and over again is going to get you able to do it at higher and higher key levels as everybody gets more comfortable with it. That can be a huge thing.
There's going to be advantages and disadvantages to every single composition. So say you're running a double rogue comp. Double rogue is probably not that great for this season, but an advantage of running a double rogue comp is you're probably really good at dealing with double maggot or double confessor, like a double maggot in Underrot or double confessor in a Taltazar on teaming week. I guess is the only time you see double confessor. But
no,
like,
you could do it. You could pull 9 on the left on non-taming week.
You got me fucked up if you think somebody's actually pulling 9, but yeah,
you could, but you shouldn't.
Auger.
Yeah, then you've got 2 augers as well. Which problem?
Anyways, but the point being,
you see the Auger.
Double confessor, double maggot. That's an advantage of a double rogue comp, and that comp is not very good right now.
Right.
Yeah. You wouldn't have any threat issues though. That's for sure.
True. Yeah. So maybe I
with a vengeance team.
And you can like do RP stuff in some dungeons. So sending like one rogue to go do the dog RP and one rogue to go do the pig RP or whatever is something you could consider with that comp as well. There's definitely a lot of options there, and you really got to make sure that you're if you're just stealing some team's route, there's a good chance that like there's a fire mage pull in there or whatever. And if you don't have a fire mage, what are you doing trying to do that pull? And so come up with pulls that make sense and play to your team's strengths, and identify if your team has any unique strengths and make sure you're using them, because that can be really important.
It's funny you brought up the fire mage thing. So I did a pull in teaming Underrot yesterday, the teaming double swarmer triple maggot pull after the first boss. And I went there like straight away and lusted it as the first pull of the dungeon, basically, after the obelisk. And it was really hard without a fire mage. We had to AoE stop the maggots like 6 times, I think, and then someone died, and the second blood swarmer lived for a while after we broke the CC. It was a pretty hard pull, so maybe not do that without a fire mage.
Yeah, it can work with an unholy DK as well. But otherwise is monk of danger.
Well, 3 stops on the maggots. You have to have like strong AoE stops to be able to deal with that too.
We had 6 AoE stops. Yeah.
Well, fire mage counts as one of those as well, right? DB really underrated actually. DB criminally underused ability.
In that group, we had Leg Sweep, Chaos Nova, Mass Fear from the Shadow Priest, Bull Rush, Ring of Peace, Typhoon. I think we're the 6th up.
Not bad. And then after the keystone is over, ideally not during the keystone, you want to be improving on the route as well. So we do this like we'll be like, all right, look, what if we had where's a pull that went wrong? What could we have done to make that not go wrong? Oftentimes, you need to be really careful to not change your route from a good route because you mess something up, right? If you like missed a kick and you wipe to a pack, don't make that pull smaller. But if you realize there's a systemic issue with the pull where you're like, oh no, we don't have enough kicks to do this pull, or oh no, we have this huge aggro issue with the order of CCs that we're using here, or we have this, whatever problem we have, that's when you can look at it and be like, all right, do we have a way that we can change this without slowing our pathing down?
And a good example is like maybe like double assassin and Motherlode. So say you don't have an outlaw rogue. Double assassin is really hard to play without while pulling it in other packs. I know in seasons past, people will just pull double assassin into like a couple peacekeepers, and that's normally going to be okay if you have a bunch of AoE stops. So your tank and another melee can get 1 assassin, then your rogue can solo the other one, right? But say you don't have an outlaw rogue, it's going to take a lot of effort to be able to stop those assassins. So you need to take that a little bit slower. Maybe you like to not pull that pack, and you have to have just like a strong fundamental understanding of how things need to be done.
Yeah, exactly.
I got lots of thoughts on that pack. I think it's actually worth to do that pack all the time, because almost everyone in the group, as long as you just have like 1 or 2 peacekeepers with that pack alone, almost everyone in the group can help stop those assassins, as long as people are vocal about needing help on the next stop. Like if you have an assassination rogue, for example, and they can't get the second flechettes cast, just say, hey, someone grab this, and whichever tank class it is will probably have something to grab it, with like Paralyze or Stormbolt or Typhoon from Guardian Druid. Like there's always a bunch of stop.
Yeah, there's that's kind of true everywhere. Like a lot of maggot casts go through, and very few would go through if somebody said, "I need help on next maggot." Right.
Right.
You can hibernate the maggot. Yeah.
True.
There's like 12 options.
Yeah, there really is so much, and this is kind of a good just general tenet of Mythic Plus is just call out if you're not going to be able to do something, and somebody will have an idea to help you. But if you're just trying to think instead of saying something, you're gonna wipe everybody. Another thing here is just quantity as well, right? The more keys you run, the more shots you get at these dungeons, the better off everything is going to get. So, making sure that you're getting keys in is a really important thing as well. Just time in the dungeon. Okay. Speaking of that, many of your keys are going to be depletes. If you're pushing with a consistent group past the point of easy keys, which is like 15s to maybe 20s for some groups, but for many groups, stuff stops being easy at like 17 or whatever. Wherever that point is where stuff stops being easy, it could be at any keystone level. You're going to start having depleted keys, right? The first 1, 2, 3 times you see a certain key at a certain level, you might deplete it before you actually end up getting it. And that is something that you need to be okay with. And this is an important thing as well. Like something you might not figure out about the people you've chosen to play with is whether they're actually fun to play with when you're depleting keys, because that is going to be a lot of your time spent.
Yeah, and anecdotally, I was playing with a group, and we were doing, I don't know, I think we were probably playing like 8 to 9 hours a week, and we were timing 22s and 23s, which is totally fine. And this is like before the big push week, but only playing 9 hours a week is not a lot in terms of just the raw amount of keys that you need to be able to get in. Like you see these Mythic Plus teams, and they will literally slam 12 hours a day. I don't think you need to do that, but I think getting in even if you can get 3 keys in a day or something like that, it will end up stacking up.
Yeah, I mean,
It will. Yeah.
A lot of the stuff we're saying can be applicable if you're on a longer time period as well, if you're not playing as much every day. But building up the familiarity with the dungeons at a certain point. If you're only doing each dungeon once per week, you're not getting that benefit of having of being familiar with it, right? It's going to be your first dungeon of that week every week. You're never getting a practice run of it.
I also think that you shouldn't be looking at any of those keys as dead keys either. Somebody in chat's talking about keeping group morale up is difficult. People get so demoralized by dead keys. If you were starting out from almost fundamental building blocks and starting from the ground and building up, you can't get demoralized by dead keys because you don't understand why those keys are dead yet even. Sure, the dungeons may just fundamentally be a little bit harder, but you have to be able to even play through the dungeons for them to you have to be able to even just go through the dungeons to do them at a level or 2 below where the rest of your dungeons are, for them to even be dead keys. If you don't go into that dungeon at all, it's always going to be a dead key.
Right, the King's Rest effect where nobody runs any King's Rest, so even though it's 2 or 3 key levels harder than the others, it's even more harder because nobody knows what's going on in there. Nobody is as practiced at it.
Yeah, it's a loop. It's very cyclical.
Mm. Okay. Of course, we've talked about attitude a lot. We've talked about having a constructive attitude and not raging at people. To some extent, obviously, there are groups out there that are full of people that do actually rage at each other as well. I think the most important thing is just making sure that you're in a group where everybody's kind of on the same page about this, right? If you're playing with or as a rager, make sure you're not playing with people that aren't able to work in that environment, right? Some people are able to do it, and it's not as many. You're almost always going to be better off not raging and not surrounding yourself with ragers, but some groups do it and are fine. It's just incompatible with a lot of players, so make sure that there's not any incompatibilities in your team, and at any point, you will almost always do better, the better your attitude is going to be. All right, let's take a look at how to actually test things and, iterate on your strategy, come up with something new. So one thing that people always come into into I think all our streams and ask is like, do you have a spreadsheet of every ability I need to gouge in every dungeon or whatever? And the answer is no. But you can test this for yourself. You know, you can see what happens if I kick this ability, what happens if I don't kick this ability, what happens if I stun this ability, what happens if I, you know, do something, what happens if I line here. All those sorts of things are stuff that you can test and see what happens and then make a strategy around it. So this is how you discover that, like, in Shrine of the Storm, the Wash Away keeps recasting if you stun it, and it's a nice long cast, and you can just keep stunning everything on their Wash Aways, and they never actually start casting Water Blast if you do that, and that can save a lot of difficulty. That's very much something that, you know, a little bit of testing will help you figure out. You also can
There's
learn
a lot of casts like that out there, and with the new expansion coming up, I think what everybody should do if they would like Mythic Plus is the first time you do these new dungeons in Shadowlands is just stun every cast and see what recasts and what doesn't.
Yeah, even in Mythic Zero, dude. You can test this stuff in normal dungeons by yourself if you want to. Like, you don't have to be doing like a live key to be able to test any of this stuff. You can walk into a normal dungeon and just test it.
Yeah, we actually do that from time to time, because sometimes in my group there's arguments about like how an ability behaves, right? And so we, you know, we go in and end in Mythic Zero or whatever, or just the next key, and actually test to see what happens. You can also test to see, like, can I survive standing in this mechanic? You know, what happens if I stand in the Brute Smash and King's Rest? What happens if I stand in, you know, this swirly or whatever? Is that something that we can just live and not worry about? And how, you know, how much does it do? Is it reduced by armor? Is it blockable? All those kinds of things can really matter. And then you can also just test, like, is this pull doable, right? Okay, we live this pull. Can we add 4 more mobs to this pull and live it? Can we do 2 Bloodswarmers at once? You know, can we do 6 Harpooner pull or something? And the answer is probably going to be no to both of those things, but maybe you've got the right comp, right? Maybe you can make one or both of those pulls work. So try it out.
We were talking about this before the show started even, and it was like, so you know the original 9 pull that you do in Freehold Ratnos?
Yeah.
Young Woohoo Chow grabbed like another pack.
Oh yeah, the 13 pull. Yeah,
exactly. We turned it into a 13 pull, and it was like, oh, okay, this adds just a crack shot, a couple of Corsairs. This is really not that bad. It doesn't change like fundamentally how the pull works.
Yeah, I mean, that in the MDI you pull 31% in your first pull in Freehold, right? Like, you know, somewhere between 9 mobs and 31% is where your group is probably going to cap out. So, you know, you can either just always pull 9, or you can actually test and see where it is that you die. Another thing to do is to have a good UI setup, and ideally to share with your group a good UI setup. Everybody always being on the lookout for good weak auras, good timers. There's a good set. Morning, friend of the podcast, has made a Mythic Plus timers weak aura package that's pretty great, that I guess we can put into chat now. Here it is. And I'll put it in the description below as well if you're watching on YouTube or whatever, or in iTunes. This is a weak aura that will just like track, you know, Rending Maul, Berserker Bleed, Frost Shock, a whole bunch of abilities here. You can see a huge list of abilities that this is just going to put a timer on your screen for, and that can be really helpful, especially some of the stuff like, you know, the Berserker Bleed. If you know when this is coming, you can know when the Demon Hunter has to run next to it and Blade Dance. And if you don't know when that's coming, then you're gonna die, right?
It's a really good weak aura Morning made. I think one of the notable things in there for people looking into Mythic Plus for the first time is it includes stuff like the thug charges in Motherlode. At a certain level in Mythic Plus, those thug charges will kill you, and so you need to know like exactly when they're going to happen, and to top yourself off with a health pot or health stone if you need to right before, just in case it picks you, or pop a defensive. Stuff like that is really critical information.
Yeah, then another one is BFA targeted spells. This is another useful weak aura. This is something that you can also get. It's a pretty strong one that will put on like unit frames when somebody's being targeted by something, and can be just it can be a very strong thing to have going on. You know, it's got a lot of custom options to configure it, but at its core, it will just like put like a powder shot icon on somebody when they're being shot by a powder shot, and that can be really useful. Used to be even stronger. It used to draw lines to mobs that were targeting you, and you could easily line them, but
man, I didn't like that. That felt like cheating.
Yeah, it did feel a little bit like cheating. For sure.
I do like the option on there that displays the player's name above the enemy target's nameplate, so it shows who they're casting on, and you can just like decide whether to bark that person if you're a healer, or to have them like feign death or vanish if they're a rogue or hunter, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think seeing a target on a nameplate, either through this weak aura or like Plater can do it as well, just by default, can be really important. Like the spider, you're fighting the spider, and you've got a prop warrior in your group. You don't want to kick over their reflect, right? So you want to be able to see like really quickly, is the warrior being targeted? Okay, we're reflecting. Otherwise, I'm interrupting. That can be really, really massive. So yeah, those sorts of weak auras, this is just an example. There's a bunch of other spots where
I just threw 2 more in there.
Threw 2 more, okay.
Yeah. So in addition to the morning dungeon timers one, there's also one that pops up on nameplates as well. It's completely customizable, and I think it's just like a base. I think it's just like a base package created by Relo right now. But if you want to spend the time to be able to like map out like the timers on some of the abilities and be able to track some of the cooldowns on the spells, this is a good way to be able to just get a good gauge of like when the next ability is going to be coming through. That's a good one. And then the party cooldown tracker by Nagi, the artist formerly known as Naga, also very good as well.
Yeah, this is a very strong weak aura that having access to knowing when your group has, you don't necessarily need all of these things. Like for instance, you could probably delete the coordinated assault part of this weak aura because that's survival hunter ability, but most of much of this stuff can be useful to know, especially I think combustion, those sorts of big cooldowns. Knowing whether you have combustion is going to affect what your next pull is going to be, or at least it should affect that. So knowing timings of those sorts of abilities can be really useful for everybody, not just for tanks and healers. But yeah, I mean, knowing all this stuff, you can configure it and have it track whatever cooldowns you want, and that can be really strong. Okay, yeah, so that's just some of the weak auras, but in general, just the process of making everybody's interface better is a really, really strong thing to be doing in Mythic Plus, right? Like, just always be on the lookout for good new weak auras and share them with your team. And there's just so many that are like that. So many good weak auras that can make your life easier in these keys. And making your life easier is like, even if it doesn't make you not die to a mechanic anymore, if it gives you more free brain power in a dungeon, that's really big too.
Speaking of weak auras, while we're on that topic, we brought this up a long time ago, but tracking the party buffs like Battle Shout, Fort, and Intellect on the group is important in Mythic Plus. If someone dies, they need to be rebuffed soon after they get rezzed. Like, as long as 2 to 3 people in the group track that someone is missing one of those buffs, I think it works out. But I've had to tell quite a few people lately that may have forgotten about that to get that weak aura.
Yeah, I just never bring scrolls, and I just assume that other people are going to remember it for me.
Honestly,
and that's why it's a problem.
There with you.
When I'm playing a class that relies on Battle Shout, I track whether or not I am missing Battle Shout, so I can call for Battle Shout. But I don't track anybody else's situation on any of those other things. That's all I care about, man.
I track all 3. I want the group to time the key.
I don't care about that. I just care about overall damage.
Big
True.
damn. That is why I swapped to a Beast Mastery Hunter.
Okay. So yeah, that getting those weak auras, you can get them from other people that you play with. That's part of the benefit of like swapping in people, is that you can just yoink their good weak auras, especially if you can find out when they have a weak aura through like a /say bubble that you don't have. Watching people's streams, you can yoink their weak auras too, or just in general, yeah, reaching out, asking other players for either strategies or weak auras advice can be a really big way to implement that and incorporate it into your own play as well.
Okay, so there's like going to be a large amount of players who are like streaming to, I don't know, let's say like 20 viewers, or like less than 20 viewers even. You can type in their chat and they may be like literally 5K rated with like streaming to 20 viewers, and you can ask them questions about their strategies, how to get better, doing a lot of things like that. That's probably going to be to your benefit too, because that is a wealth of knowledge in players, and you can get like really direct answers, because it's going to be hard to type in people's chat. Okay, so say Dratnus has 2,000 viewers at that time. It's going to be hard to get a question answered by Dratnus.
What do you mean? I answer like all my questions.
All right, you answer most of your questions, but like you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Jerk.
It's true. Those streamers that are small but highly skilled are really, really good resources for people.
Although, you know, some streamers like won't read their chat in the middle of the key, so you kind of gotta lurk and wait for the key to be over, and then you can talk to them. It depends. Reading chat in the middle of the key, an advanced strategy that I would not recommend for novice streamers. While you're pushing keys, at least, you know, if you're doing easy keys, then of course it's fine. But it's difficult to do that in 25 or whatever.
What are you talking about? You and I have been slayed many of time due to not looking at our current.
I don't know what you're talking about, Tuttles. I would never do that.
Ah, yes, I've never seen you die to that either.
Ah, yes. All right.
I died to a raptor the other day on my hunter by looking at chat. I felt really bad.
Yeah, dude, it feels so bad, actually. Not that that's ever happened to me, but it would feel so bad to die to something while reading chat.
and then they'll be like, why did you die? And then you just have to say, I don't know, be dumb.
You mean big dumb.
Oh, yeah, actually, one of the easiest things to read chat during is Fortified 26 Shadow Zool when you're playing Vengeance Demon Hunter. Yeah. No, I took one of my hands off the keyboard. I was just pressing one button with my other hand, and totally free 180k HPS. Vengeance Demon Hunter on that boss. No.
Okay.
I actually have a really funny story about reading chat. In season 1, when I was like into high keys really hard, and I was tanking every key I did. It's like every pull was really difficult, and I couldn't take my eyes off my screen at all. And then I tuned into my friend Hunte's stream, who was healing, and he was doing the first pull Tolgor, right? This giant pull with tons of damage on the group, and he had a Blood DK tank that was doing it really well, so he didn't really have to do much. He was reading chat the entire time. He was playing with one hand and eating with his other hand. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
That's the state of healing, dude.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's healing a blood decay, right? It's like there's nothing you can do anyway, so whatever. All right, let's move into some questions and answers to close out this week's show.
We're gonna have extended Q&A this week, I think.
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions, so we can get a little bit of value out of these, because this one, for instance, comes from last week. We didn't get to it last week's show. So, from Mendo_KSI on Twitter, do you think Mythic Key's upgrade system needs a rework, and do you have any suggestions to improve it? Either you want to take this one?
Do I think it needs a rework? Maybe. Like, I think it probably needs a rework. Do I think that there's a good solution to be able to solve it? There's not like a great one, because they've expressed time and time again that they want you to have to play like these underrepresented dungeons. So they give you 5 options basically. Yeah, and on the other hand, their argument would be we are shoehorning ourselves into these really bad dungeons that we don't want to play.
All paths do converge to King's Rest, right? Like eventually all your keys do become King's Rest keys. And it's just a question of how lucky your group is when that happens.
That's because you don't want to play King's Rest.
Right.
So you don't maintain King's Rest.
I maintain that there should be like a discover mechanic on upgrading keys where you get a choice of 3 different dungeons at the end of your key to get your next level on. Because that means you still have to play your original key out of the cache for the week. Like if you're a player that only wants to do 1 key for the week, you still have to do your key that you got out of the cache. But if you're a Mythic Plus aficionado, then you get a choice at least a little more than you do right now, so you can choose 1 of 3 dungeons.
I would like to see, like, you know, as you do keys, you build up like a reroll currency that lets you reroll. Like, you know, every 10 keys you do, you get to reroll your key or something if you want to.
So what's the fundamental problem with this? The fact that once you do a 24, you get a 25 that's not doable?
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of the problem, is that just there's some keys that are, you know, horrific compared to the others, right? Like Junkyard.
It's just balance relative,
You could
right?
2 chests of Junkyard 25 and then get a 27 you have no hope in. And there's like 25s you can't time, right? Like that's very feasible right now. Junkyard, Freehold, Toldagor, those are all keys that are like 3 or 4 keystone levels higher than, you know, King's Rest.
Yeah.
So that...
Well, I mean, the fundamental issue is the dungeon balance, right? But can we really realistically expect them to change all that on the fly all the time? I don't think so.
Exactly. Like, I don't think the dungeon balance is like all that likely to be good, to be perfect next expansion either. So like building in a little bit of a safety nozzle valve so that, you know, instead of having to do King's Rests just miserable, like having to do half as many King's Rests in my life, I'd be so happy if I could just reroll half of them. But yeah, I get that they don't want us to never have to go to King's Rest, right? Like they want us to go to all the dungeons, and like I understand that. Just like, just let me go to a few less King's Rests, please.
I think also there's just like a problem with. Okay, so like you have to play KR eventually, especially if you want score out of the dungeon. Like I don't know, man. You have to play these underrepresented dungeons, especially if you do want the score from them.
Yeah, but like, it feels different to choose to go to King's Rest than to be forced by, exclamation point keys returning 5 King's Rest keys.
Okay, that's fair.
I think there's like, let's say you master King's Rest and you're like the best Mythic Plus group in the world. You can still only do it at like 2 levels below the highest dungeon right now, so it's still frustrating, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, next question comes from Drowning Pool 86, who asks, how do you best manage the line between critical feedback for improvement versus just being upset with a fail? I think Growl
tone of your voice.
Tone of voice is important here, and also just like, are you trying to cause improvement here or not? Right, like that's the thing, right? Is that a lot of the time people like sound like they're giving or try to sound like they're giving critical feedback when in fact they are just assigning blame or whatever. So make sure that's not what you're doing, right?
It's the why did you do this versus how can we fix this effect? Like, why did you do that? That's not giving critical feedback. That's like you're like trying to get them to say I'm not very smart, so you feel better about yourself. Whereas how can we help fix this in the future is you've assigned that there's a problem, you've identified the problem, and you say how can we fix this going forward in the future? I think that would be
I think this question as well is like sometimes you already know how to fix it, right? Like sometimes the answer is just that person needs to get their kick, that person needs to like go to a certain spot and do a certain thing or whatever, and like you need to tell that person that that's what they should have done. How do you do that without causing a problem to the social situation?
Well, you got to leave your ego at the door too. Like everybody makes mistakes. Like you cannot just be like overly elitist, be like, oh, this guy's bad, blah 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 blah. Like you can't just, especially if you want to push with one consistent group. The easiest way to no longer push with one consistent group is the group falling apart because you berated somebody and flamed them into the ground whether they don't want to play anymore.
Yeah, that is definitely something to avoid. All right.
Okay. Lenoxis actually has really good advice in the chat. Did you make a mistake or should we have a different person taking care of this? I think that is actually a really good sentiment. It's like, so sometimes your class may not be like overly well equipped to be able to deal with something over and over again. Or did you just make a mistake? Like you can forget things. You can just like, oh, I mispositioned. I didn't get the kick quick enough. Oops, accidentally pressed my gouge a millisecond early. Won't happen again. Like if you run it back, would it happen again? No, if the answer is no, you don't really need to change anything. It sucks.
Yeah, that's a good way as well. Making the person either say, take me off that job, or I screwed up, I'll get it next time, or whatever. Or like, basically either saying, okay, did you make a mistake or do we have to change something? Very, very good way to probably get people to, not be so defensive.
Yeah, I do like that. It makes the person in question think about all 5 people instead of just themselves in that moment and like try to defend themselves. Be like, should I have the tank do this, or is he or she in a bad situation and needs to tunnel their health bar? Maybe I should be the one doing this, and I just need to play a little bit better. Whereas otherwise, you'd ask them, "Hey, why don't you do this right?" And they'd be like, "I don't know. I'm just gonna go quiet now."
Yeah, the old going quiet, something that does happen.
A lot of players are quiet, so making sure that you have like probably 1 or 2 strong personalities in your group is also going to be fairly important.
Definitely, at least making sure that you don't like avoid conversations or hard conversations, it just shutting down after a wipe and then pulling the same thing without talking about it at all can be a very bad pattern to get into. Okay, next question. How does it feel to push high keys on unpopular / non-meta specs or play with it in a consistent group? I think we talked about this a little bit about how this is definitely the way to do that. But even still, you're going to, depending on who you're playing with, you're going to be reminded that you're not playing a Resto Druid very frequently. Whenever your tank's like, okay, I guess we can't do that pull without Ironbark, or okay, I guess we need Ursul's Vortex or Typhoon there or whatever. That's something that you're going to run into quite a bit. So I don't know, that also, I don't think goes away.
There will always be backhanded comments like that too, if you're not playing the most meta shit.
I've got a really good example of this one. So I've been playing with the Shadow Priest recently. When we first started playing together, I didn't do the routes as best I could with the Shadow Priest because I wasn't used to it yet. And I think he was doing like 100k, 110k overall in underroute. Yesterday we did an underroute where I got him to do 140k overall because of the way I pulled. And I'm sure that was extremely rewarding, not only to him, but to me too, because I like figured out a really, really good way to pull around it.
It's also teaming.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, teaming adds a little more damage.
Okay.
You good?
Dude, man, it's so early. All right, Khalifa asks.
3 o'clock.
It's 1 over here. It's 1 p.m. This is still bedtime for me. Next question comes from Khalifa, who asks, "What about re-rolling for non-play advantages?" Tettles, what's your take on this one?
I think it depends on group dynamic, right? So like, I guess I ran into this one, right? I probably could have pushed higher on Moonkin than I ended up finishing up at. So there was still some like play advantage that I was able to make. So I guess I technically rerolled for non-play advantage, like where sometimes you're going to feel like shit if you're playing something that's not meta 2, especially if you know that you're holding your group back. So that could potentially be something that you look to change. And that's going to be on a player-by-player basis. And it's going to be like, it's going to have to be like a group conversation too. Like, do you really want to spend the time to be able to gear up this thing and swap around your strategies to be able to play something that's a little bit more meta? But I guess that's probably a play advantage. But as for like non-play advantages, it would also make your group feel better. Like there's always something in the back of your mind that you kind of know that you're just like, this is a lot suboptimal, isn't it? And then you're just like, I don't really know how to work around this beyond what we have been doing. I think you have to be like very real with yourself, and your group has to be very real with themselves.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, and you gotta kind of be honest with yourself. Like, is your goal? Are you trying to just play your class and like? Is that what's gonna make you happiest, regardless of how good it is, or is your goal to like push? And are you willing to get off your class? And that's, there's not a wrong answer to that question. If you're somebody who's like, yeah, I'm a balanced druid player or whatever, that's what I'm gonna do. Then under no circumstances should you reroll, right? Like that's, but if you prioritize more than just the class you play, then yeah, it's something you gotta think about.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with either way. Especially if you are in a group, it makes it easier to stay on your less than optimal class. Like I would say, if you're pugging, really should be looking to edge towards those like meta specs. But like, if you're just in a very consistent group playing with the same 5, 6, 7 people, you can kind of play whatever, man.
Okay, next question comes from Rylera from Discord. How do you keep from just doing the same thing over and over if you're not being exposed to new people and new ideas when you're doing keys? What do you do when all you end up with is dead end keys? So yeah, we talked a little bit about the dead end thing. I don't know what my group did. We got to 4 King's Rest keys in our group by I think Wednesday this week. Might have been Thursday.
I think dead keys are a lost fallacy for people who aren't doing like 24s.
Man, King's Rest is hard at any key level. King's Rest 20 is so much harder than like Freehold 22.
Yeah, I would agree with that actually. Never mind, you're probably right.
But either way, I mean, you just got to go to King's Rest. Is what you have to do if you have all King's Rest keys. That's what we did. We've done like 5 King's Rest keys this week, and it doesn't feel great. And every time you do a key, there's a chance it turns into a King's Rest, and that sucks. How do you keep from just doing the same thing over and over again? I think is something we haven't really discussed though from this question. So like, how do your strategies improve if you're not cycling in new people, right? If you're just playing with the same 5 over and over again. Because if you look at it,
make your pulls harder.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the like best strategy iteration in the world has been done by a group of 5 people playing without outside, stuff, right? Like Method NA, Method EU, and the MDI. There's no outside people getting cycled in there when they're iterating on their strategies and coming up with their stuff. A lot of the top push teams play with 5 people and like don't do all that much swapping around people. Some do. Some will play with other people, but like coming up with new strategies as a team, it's something that you've got to just ideally have somebody or multiple people in your group that do that.
I think like good examples. Samrek plus Malthier on Harlan Sweet, not that bad. Like really not that hard. Would people have known that unless people started playing that? No. you have to play it for the first time to be able to know that it's not that hard.
Yeah, so just like somebody having an idea like, hey, can we try this? You want to have a group where you're playing with people who have those kind of ideas, and your group is like down to hear those ideas and try them out. Especially if you're like in a key that's below your top level or whatever. That's a good time to do experimenting.
There's always the conflict of not wanting to deplete the key on live keys, and then also wanting to do something new at the same time. But it's hard to get the group to want to do that, to take that risk, right? So I think a good way to go about this is if you have a key that's one level lower than you've already done, and the group has already done that key on the higher level, use that as an experiment to try something new in that key, to like see if you want to do that for the next time you do a high key of that same dungeon. Like this week I decided to get my group to do the blob with the last boss of Shrine. Like I think that's time save, and they should know how to do it. And so I use the teaming Quaking week and the time restrictions on teaming, because you have to pull like 4 extra pulls in Shrine this week. It's insane. I use that as a way to make us have to do that strategy and learn it. So I think it's a good idea to put yourself in hard situations a lot.
Okay, Trell, next question is also for you. Is it worth to pick up Twilight Dev 2 for Brewmaster Monk?
Yeah, I think so. I think you want a hybrid set out there so that you can have a mix of Twilight and versatility. If you only have a Twilight rank 3 like I do right now, you pretty much have to go 75 corruption of Twilight or 0, and that's it. But if you have a Twilight 2 in your bags, I think that makes for a good hybrid.
Yeah, I think there are arguments to own all 3 ranks of Twilight Dev in various amounts. So rather than trying to think, just the general thought process I see people go with preserved contaminants is they look at the vendor and then they come into my stream, your stream, whatever, and they're like, hey, can I buy whatever the best corruption is on the vendor for my spec right now? Like, is it worth it for me to buy Honed Mind or whatever, or, Sphere 2 or whatever for my spec? And I don't think that that's the best way to approach the corruption vendor. I think what you want to do is come up with some gear sets, pretend that there's not that rotation, just come up with some sets of corruption that you'd want, and figure out what those are, right? Come up with a full set of corruption that you want for your spec. And if you're playing something like a Brewmaster where you want multiple sets, figure out a good set of corruptions that you could have in your bags that would give you access to all the sets you want. So whether that's Twilight Dev 1s or 2s or 3s, it could be any number of those things. Figure out which of those sets is going to be best for you or whatever. Figure out what you're going to want to start building towards. And then once you've made that decision, wait until that stuff's on the vendor and buy those things. Don't be swayed by what's on the vendor right now. It's like 2 weeks until whatever the next thing is, probably. So you can chill and don't get baited by what's there right now.
Another problem is that you get 3 corruption resistance every week too.
Planning out
you have to have some foresight, and having those lower budgeted stuff, like your masterful ones, your severe ones, your expedient ones, for just a little bit of bonus, to be able to swap it up occasionally whenever you hit another break point of 10 resistance. That's also important to have. You're not going to always be wearing that plus 10 one, but having it for 1 week, and then you can cleanse the piece that had that severe 1 on it and put a severe 3 on it once you have more resistance later on.
That's the thing, right? Is mains in like a month, your main is going to have not only whatever they want, you're also going to have extra contaminants in your bags, and you're going to be able to cleanse around your BIS items to be whatever corruption you want. So we're approaching that point soon, but yeah, just plan out a gear set for whatever it is you're trying to do, and then buy those corruptions, and don't worry about the rotation. Just buy whatever parts are on your gear set whenever they're on sale. Planning out a gear set for a specific week can be worthwhile as well. Like, I already know what I'm going to do with my corruption next week when I get 3 more resistance, and if there's a big push week coming up in 4 weeks, you'll know how much corruption you'll have for then, and you can make a good decision about what you're going to want to wear for then, and buy it in advance. So yeah, just plan ahead, and don't react to the vendor. That's not.
I have a question for you, Dretnos. How do you feel about Thing from Beyond in Mythic Plus? Because I've been running it every single key on my Hunter.
Yeah, it's not
what are
bad.
Your general thoughts about it?
I don't know, like for Hunter. So the thing about Thing from Beyond as well is that it's kind of not as deadly as Eye of Corruption, really.
Yeah,
Eye of Corruption is
I think the eyeball is way more deadly than the Thing from Beyond. Because I can stop the Thing from Beyond over and over again. I feel like I just died in my fucking eyeball sometimes. I'm just like.
Yeah, so the problem on Hunter with Eye Corruption is just like a big eyeball, but you can run out of it in most cases. I think
there's only
good.
But for squishy classes like Hunter, I think there's only two instances that I know so far that I wouldn't want 40, and that's the last boss of Tolagor and the last boss of Workshop. Because you need like all of your buttons that you would normally use to dodge Think from Beyond for living instead.
So the avoidant keys. Oh yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two.
I wasn't speaking 100 specifically. I was just thinking like all classes. I feel like almost every class can run Thing from Beyond, right?
Yeah, I mean, so some handle it better than others, right? Like Enhancement Shaman, you know, you're pretty squishy, you're in melee, you don't have a lot of defensives, you don't have a lot of ways to stop Thing from Beyond, you don't have a lot of self-healing.
You melee. Yeah.
Right, so like those are specs that I would probably, in most high keys, chill under 40 on.
Arms is really bad too.
Stuff like
Havoc.
Havoc DH is like, yeah, you know, Thing from Beyond doesn't do anything to you, right? Like, it's whatever. BM Hunter, it's like you can dodge it if you need to pretty easily. You can just run away from it, or you can trap it or whatever. So you have a lot of counterplay to it. I think it really is just a spec by spec question, though.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I wouldn't do it on tanks generally either, because
so, for Moonkin, I always felt like it was like kind of spooky sometimes to be running Thing from Beyond, but then as fucking Hunter, I'm like, dude, I'll play this every dungeon. I don't even care. Overseer Corgus? Bitch, I will run this.
Man. That sounds like somebody who has not fought Overseer Corgus recently.
Yeah, I feel like you're going to change your mind eventually on that one.
I'll probably hit my Thing from Beyond and just die.
I have Corruption as the problem on Overseer Corgus again, unless there are cannonball stacks that you can Z-axis it on that fight. So if you play near one of those, you can then dodge your eye when it spawns. So that's a big move on that fight. All right, last question for today. From Talboo34, how do you make the most of being only able to do 8 to 10 keys per week? It's hard to balance learning new things, which always goes poorly the first time, and actually finishing keys / gaining IO. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier about how this is just always going to be a challenge. I don't know what the best balance of these two things is. My guess is that, you know, you still want to focus on learning new things, but probably less than a group that could actually play, you know, more keys, right?
As a tank player, I usually have like a good idea of how much spare time we'll have in a run if we do it cleanly. And so I'll say like we can allocate this amount of time for science this run, or we can try 1 or 2 new things based on how much time we have at the end, I think. And if that goes wrong, then we have to like really focus up and try hard for the key to still time it. But the goal is still to time the key in any case. And the other part is once you deplete a key, you should go ham with sciencing until people get burnt out. Just do all the things you want to try if the key's already gone.
Yeah, you got to be careful because you don't want all your depletes to turn into like 30 minutes over type situations, but doing a little bit of testing can be really valuable, yeah. In that, you know, depleted, it's such a low pressure environment once the key's already depleted.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. That about does it for us this week, gamers. Hope you've enjoyed this show. Again, we have gotten out almost all those giveaway prizes. One more person, though, does need to reply in the next couple days, so check your Twitter DMs. And yeah, thanks so much for all the support so far over our first year of the show. We'll be back next week with another one. Bye, everybody.
GG.